to this 81st session of ICC Crack the Wellness Code. I'm Somnath Chatterjee, co-founder and executive director. Welcome you to the 81st session. And thanks to everybody who have been coming and joining our session for 81 times. Today, for the first time, we are doing a session on skin. And this is going to be a two-part session. And we have with us none other than Dr. Sunil Dhawan, okay? And he has been graciously, given his time. And he has been working with me for last 2 months with his presentations. And there's a lot of ground that we're going to cover in these two sessions. And it's more than what you just see on the surface of the skin. So Dr. Dhawan is going to dive deeper and deeper with us. And it's going to be awesome two-part session. So over to you, Dr. Sunil Dhawan. And before we do that, I just wanted to thank everybody from ICC Crack the Wellness Code who have been working with us, volunteering their time, resources, our patrons, our executive committee members, our other co-founders like Mr. Naren Bakshi is already there, Dr. Pankaj Vej, and the executive, the CEO of ICC, Raj Desai. So without much ado, we start this session and welcoming Dr. Sunil Dhawan. And finally, another special word of thanks to Solange M. Salem. Solange El Samin has composed this wonderful music for us. So you'll be hearing this quite often because we use it to calm our seniors, to calm our youth, and also to, sort of soothe all of you as you come and join again and again. We have a whole lot of composers for us, and this one was very, very specifically composed for Crack the Wellness Code. So over to you, Dr. Sunil Dhawan. Thanks for joining us. And we have a lot of anxious people waiting to hear from you as we start our first session on skin. So to start with, what is it, that really, prompted you to get into dermatology?
So yeah, this is the third time somebody asked me that same question today. It's a few patients ask me. Yeah, it's mostly because it encompasses a wide range of ages and conditions, and easily you can see it, and you can treat it, and you can see if people get better or not get better. So it's very, very gratifying. I also did internal medicine, so I'm double.
So would you like to share with us some high points during your 3 decades of, dabbling with skin, basic care, therapeutics, challenges, emerging technologies, some high points?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in practice for 30 years. I've seen pretty much most skin conditions, not every one, and every day I see something new that I didn't expect to see, and I sometimes get stumped, and I learn quite a bit from every patient and encounter. And currently working on some technologies to get better interface between the physician and the patient using phone and app-based technologies. So I'm the company on that. Scale that over.
Dr. Dhawan, a common question that we have been receiving from our participants and the community at large has been, we're all wearing masks, right? Willy-nilly, we have to wear masks, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So it's always covering our face. We go out, we have to, it's mandatory. A lot of people wanted to know what impact does mask have on the skin if you're wearing it for such long hours and so frequently and so persistently. Any suggestions for mask? I mean, all of us are wearing it, and how, any tips on that? And does it have any side effect? And if so, what should be done?
Mostly it just gives people occasionally rashes around the mouth, acting like rash around the mouth, on the cheeks, on the chin, up into the central part of the face, especially if you have a history of acne. And especially if you get rubbing from the mask. That's basically it. There's no side effect from it. You should be wearing it. The way to fix this problem is to take it off as frequently as possible when you're not in an area that you actually need it. And overwearing it is the biggest problem. People just keep wearing them. And not changing the mask frequently enough is probably an issue that's something. That's pretty much the only problem with masks. So we're seeing a lot more acne breakouts and pimples underneath.
So any specific type of mask that you would like to recommend,
You know,
particularly?
they all do it, but the ones that are completely more occlusive or blocking will do it more. Ones
Mhm.
that breathe a little bit will probably do it less, so that's not been complete.
So anything to do with the fabric, Dr. Dhawan?
Yeah, it's the fabric that's got a little bit more. The firm N95 masks are probably going to be a little bit worse than the looser ones, but you have to wear them. So you have to wear
Okay, great. Uh, I know we have a lot of grounds to cover.
them.
There are a bunch of other questions as well, which we have been able to collect. But I would ask you one last question
Sure,
before you get into your presentation.
sure.
That's what are some of the preconditions that aggravate skin damage if one is not careful about sunlight protection or other forms of radiation?
There are no real. I mean, there are a few rare conditions that make you more sensitive to the light, such as things like lupus or autoimmune diseases. But most of it is, uh, and certain medications will make you more sensitive, blood pressure medications, antibiotics. Those are the only two things that will make you more susceptible to an acute form of sun damage, but not the chronic. The chronic form is just related to how much sun you get and how often you get it. And most people from India have had a lot of sun damage. They did it when they were between the age of 10 and 20. They were out in the sun a lot, and outside, not with
Great. So let's get started. So
Sure.
here is the screen which shows a quick background of uh, Dr. Dhawan. He has been associated with Stanford for uh, since 1992. Wow. And I think there's lots. This is part one.
Yeah.
This is what we intend to cover. And over to you, Dr. Dhawan. Yeah.
Sure. So we'll talk about the skin essence and functions, variables of sunlight exposure, the effects of the sun, including tanning and aging and allergies, some diseases like what I mentioned, lupus is a common disease that gets worse with the sun, skin cancer and sunburns. We'll talk a little bit about photo-aged skin. Most of the aging you see in most people is from sun damage. Some of it's from intrinsic aging, but much of it is from sun damage. I would say 70% of what I see is sun damage related. And other forms of radiation can accelerate it or make it worse, such as X-ray radiation that people get for tumors or skin cancer, or other cancers. But predominantly, it's going to be sunlight exposure and how much sunlight you've had at certain times of the day. That's the key. Next slide, please. What are the functions of the skin? Well, it protects, gives you temperature regulation, it gives you sensation and secretion of oil and sweat. The layers of the skin are three. There's the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutis. Most of the skin problems occur in the first and second layer, the epidermis and dermis, a few in the subcutis. The common skin problems, acne, eczema, warts, psoriasis, those all occur in the first two layers there. Skin cell starts at the bottom of the first layer, migrates up the top, takes about 28 days. In people who have a condition called psoriasis, where you get large red itchy patches or on the trunk and extremities and the arms and the legs, and especially on the knees and elbows, those people's migration is as little as 3 to 4 days. So the skin cell never matures. It just goes straight up very quickly, forms a scaly patch, it's quite itchy and red. But generally, the skin cell migrates toward the skin surface and forms a protective barrier. The pigment cell is common in the first layer of skin. You get pigment from either the pigment containing cell, the numbers, or the amount of transfer of pigment from these cells to the surrounding other cell. So the woman on the left has fewer pigment containing cells and less amount of pigment within those cells and the cells around. The evolution of the person from the right to the left, that change in pigmentation, that lightening of skin occurred with a single gene change approximately 8 to 10,000 years ago. So this lightness of skin started about probably 30,000 years after we migrated out of Africa. So the woman on the right is African or African American. She has good protection, lots of pigment cells, lots of pigmentation to protect herself from the sun. So the pigment function was to protect you. So if anybody was born as an albino with no color in Central Africa, unless they're protected, they get skin cancer at a young age and die. It's a self-selecting thing that they will not survive. So that is why you have darker people generally in areas dark um, of more sunlight. And as you go northern into Northern Europe, you get lighter. And that's because if you are born with dark skin in Sweden and you don't get enough sunlight to produce vitamin D, you get rickets and you die. So that's kind of the evolutionary basis of skin color. But it started as one gene change approximately 10,000 years ago. The hair follicle and sweat gland and oil glands. The oil glands are always associated with the hair shaft. And that little canal that goes from the hair, sebaceous oil gland into the canal of the hair, that's the origins of acne. Acne originates that deep. So superficial therapies that don't get in that deep don't work. So you can scrub as much as you want and wash the face as much as you want. You'll never get deep enough for that to work. So that is a real problem that people don't quite understand much about acne. The sun is very important. Not important to most of you because you're not used to talking about it or using sunscreen. That's probably the most important thing I can tell you to do today. So the sun is a giver of life and the taker away of life. The risk of sunburn is greatest between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Up to 90% of sunlight can penetrate cloudy or overcast days. Some light fabrics and wet clothes, not cloth, sorry, that's a typo, can transmit a large amount of sunlight to the skin. Hats and beach umbrellas do not provide full protection, and sunlight is reflected by sand, water, porch decks, and snow. There's three kinds of radiation with the sun. There's UV radiation of C, B, and A, and the wavelengths are between 200 to 400 nanometers. UVC is absorbed by the ozone layer and do not reach the skin surface. UVB and UVA rays are responsible for a variety of biological effects. Mostly it's UVB and UVA. UVB penetrates not as deeply, UVA penetrates quite a bit deeper in the skin. So it's a combination of both that give you some of the changes that may not be very positive for you. There you go. UVC gets blocked way high up. UVB reaches the bottom of the epidermis, and UVA goes all the way down to the dermis. Nothing really reaches the fat layer called subcutis. That subcutis means below skin. What damage can be caused by ultraviolet radiation? UVB rays are mostly absorbed on the top layers, can cause skin cancer if you get too much of them. It produces sunburn, tanning, photoaging, and photo damage. UVA rays penetrate deeper, intensify the damage of the B guys, may contribute to skin cancer, and can cause long-term damage such as premature skin aging, dryness, roughness, wrinkling, and sunspots. So combined, they're a pretty potent combination. What are the variables of sun exposure? Skin type is important. Next. The guy on the top left is very fair skinned, just like that lady that we showed in one of the original slides about pigment. The lady on the bottom right is darker skinned, part African American, part Cuban, actually. The guys in the middle are in between. So the guys at the left is Northern European. The guy next to him on the right is probably Central European. The guy in the left-hand side of the bottom is lighter-skinned Indian, Pakistani, Iranian, Middle Eastern. And the lady at the bottom is probably the African American, light African category, and darker would be a darker skin type. So the guy that's on the top left is the highest susceptible to sun damage and skin cancer. The person on the right bottom is the least susceptible. But it doesn't mean zero, it's just less. Next. That's a real job. Women have very acute senses of smell because of estrogens and other hormones, most likely, and they're used to check whether antiperspirants and deodorants actually work. Just thought I put some amusing slide in there to break up the talk a little. Next. Times of day, sunny versus cloudy, The time between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. is the worst, usually. Sunny days are a little bit more sun exposure with UVA, not UVB. UVB gets blocked out quite a bit. Geographic location, if you're in the central part of the equator, you're going to get more sunlight than if you're at the Arctic, except for UVA rays, which tend to be everywhere. Altitude is important. So if you're in Nepal, near the base of the Himalayas, you'll get more sunlight than if you're in the flatter areas. And reflection is important. That's why people who ski a lot get a lot of damage, not just because they're closer to the sun, but because they get reflection from the snow. They get a lot of damage. If you look at ski instructors and tennis instructors, they have the most sun damage because they don't protect and they're out quite a bit and they're out on the wrong time of the day. What are the effects of the sun? You get sunburns, you get tanning, you get aging. About 10% of the Indian population is allergic to the sun. They get allergies, hives, and rashes. Certain diseases are made worse by the sun, such as something called lupus, which is an autoimmune disease. And finally, if you're lighter skinned, you can get cancer, though I've cut out quite a number of cancers in people of Indian background, especially North Indian. What does sun damaged skin look like? Well, it starts out on the left, as sunburn, gradually get roughness, you get pigmentation, you get fine wrinkling, you get deeper wrinkling, you get pre-cancers called actinic keratoses, which I have treated in people of Indian background. Again, a lot of North Indian Punjabi farmers get this. And then skin cancer. In fact, the last 3 Indians that I cut skin cancer out of were North Indian Punjabi farmers. So it's very common in that population because they had a lot of damage from the age of like 9 to 50 or 60. They were out in the sun, in the fields. And I'm sure in the South that happens too, but in the South, they tend to have more natural sun protection, which is their pigment. What does sun damaged skin look like? It's wrinkled. Sun and photo-aged skin mean the same thing. It's wrinkled, sagging, it's tough and leathery. It's got red, yellow, gray, or brown blotches. It's got things called liver spots, which are those brown spots that people get on their hands and outer arms. And it's got precancerous actinic keratoses, which do occur in people with Indian background. Don't delude yourself. So the woman on the left had very little sun exposure. And the woman on the right was, I think, her grandmother who had a lot of sun exposure as a farmer in, I believe, Russia. So you can see the difference. Most of the changes you see on the right, many of them, not probably 80% of them, are due to sun damage. The mottled pigment, the fine lines, it's not due to intrinsic aging. So if she had stayed indoors like the lady on the left, she would look a lot like the lady on the left. I have many patients who are meticulous about their sun exposure. I had a Caucasian lady today. She's 85 years old, and she looks closer to the left than the right because she's meticulous. She's careful, and she's very good about protecting herself. So she knows she's been protecting herself for 50 years, very carefully. So she knows. This is someone who was a lifeguard on Miami Beach for 30 years, quite a bit of sun damage. So most of what you see on this lady, except for some of the areas around the mouth, is due to sun damage. So all the wrinkles, the sagging, that rough, pebbly look, the pigment, that pebbliness on the chin even, a lot of that sun damage. So it's very damaged. She was a lifeguard on Miami Beach. Oh, boy, I've gone through everything. Okay, I thought I had more. So in part 2, we're going to cover specific skin ailments, preventatives, and therapeutics, including acne. And comedones are part of acne, by the way. Scarring, talk about Accutane therapy, pigment spots, melasma, which is pigmentation on the cheeks, warts, eczema, and a few other things we can talk about. There's at least 3 lectures out of this whole thing, but we're only going to do. Right, you can sign up for part 2. Thank you for attending. We appreciate all the work Somnath has done on this. It's been quite a bit, so we appreciate it.
So thank you for this great exposition. We know there's a lot to come in part 2, but we wanted to make this session very interactive. So we wanted the participants really talk to you and, because this is a subject where, people really want to interact. Sure. And I'm sure there are a lot of other anecdotes that you're going to share, what you didn't share in the presentation. So we'll be taking up questions from the chat. And if somebody also want to raise hand and talk about or ask questions, please raise hand. We will also do that. Because we want to make it interactive. But before we start, I just have one more question.
Sure.
which you didn't cover, but this is something common and could be a kind of curtain raiser for the next session that we are doing.
Sure.
What are some of so what can be the risk of acne and pimple? Uh, how can it be mitigated through holistic mind-body wellness? And if you could please cite some examples. Is there any way by, because we do a lot of best practices on mind-body wellness, is there any way that, there could be some sort of well-being practices that could avoid acne and pimple?
Yeah, so acne is caused by blocked oil glands, hormones, and bacteria. The action of hormones on that canal that I showed you is the
Mhm.
cause, part of most of the cause of it. Bacteria that's in there as well, but that's not as important. So, yeah, I mean, if you can control your hormonal surges, and you're going to have those surges when you're a teenager, but if you can control some of them, even as an adult female, which many adult females get acne, that would be the one way. And relaxation exercises can tend to control those hormonal surges quite a bit so that you don't get the hormone acting on that canal. Then you get blockage. When you get blockage, you get these little bumps, and then the bumps become inflamed. So, yeah, I mean, any meditative technique, any relaxation technique, exercise, anything to relieve kind of the stressful situation of life would do it. And you'll see many of the young people. In fact, I did a telehealth session before I came with a young woman who developed quite a bit of acne and pigmentation because of the stress of applying for college in her senior year. And she had stopped exercising and stopped, her relaxation methods. And I think if she resumes them, she'll see improvement. There are also some dietary improvements you can do. That's controversial, but limiting your fish intake, limiting your skim milk intake, and limiting your intake of simple carbohydrates and doing much more complex carbohydrates, which is really the way to also lose weight. So much of this is related to glucose surges. So blood sugar surges in the blood from eating simple carbohydrates contributes to acne. That's been shown. Several studies have shown this. Fish, skim milk, and avoiding fish, avoiding skim milk, and avoiding simple carbohydrate. So that's part of it.
Great. So that's food for skin. And I think there may be some more questions coming to you on food for skin.
Sure.
But before that, I take another question. Can you give us some tips for taking good care of the skin during winter and any special advice that you have for dry skin?
Sure. If you want to write this down, because I say this to patients at least 15 times a day, and half of them don't remember it because they're not focused or writing. So if you want to write this down, this is a good way of avoiding rashes and eczema, especially in the winter. For most of you who are on cholesterol meds, you're going to get rashes. It's common. Cholesterol medication dries out your skin just like it's changing cholesterol in your blood. So you need to do a 5-minute or less shower, lukewarm water. You can time yourself. Many of us have bathrooms that have lights that go on automatically and turn off automatically. They usually time to a 5-minute cycle, 5 or 10 minutes. So 5 minutes or less in the shower. Soap only on the hairy areas, which is your scalp, your underarms, your private area, and your face. That's it. You don't want to soap yourself everywhere. You don't need it. You only need it in humid places to get all the stickiness off. In the U.S., there is no humidity. Right now, there's very little humidity, except in the summertime. So quick showers, very little soap, which is very difficult for most Indians to do. Most Indians are used to showering for 30 minutes and soaping constantly, meaning you don't need to be that clean. COVID virus doesn't enter your back skin because you're putting soap there. It enters through your nasal passages in your mouth. So cleaning your hands is all you need to do, and your scalp and your face and your butt. So that's something you got to get out of. The other thing in the Indian mindset is most Indians grew up in India, and it's true even here among young people. But many of them grew up in India, and I've noticed that the soap advertising in India is very kind of racist. It's biased toward lighter skin. So I think and I talked to a soap executive in India one time working for one of the soap companies, and he said, we purposely put ads up like that because the implication is the more I scrub my skin with soap, the lighter I'm going to get. Meaning the lighter the skin, the better it is, which is absolutely not true. In India, darker skin is probably better for protection, but that's kind of the mindset of certain populations, which has been ingrained into us by the British. So we got to get out of that. So that's kind of, I think, the reason why we do it. Plus, it's humid and sticky in India. So here it's not humid and it's not sticky. So don't do that. And then the last step is a good moisturizer. The best moisturizer is actually coconut oil. Coconut oil I recommend in the scalp and on the body as an anti-inflammatory. I have a whole list of natural things we can do, but coconut oil is at the top of my list, as is ashwagandha and 5 other things that I recommend. I'm coming out with a list of these soon, probably in the next 6 months. A few months, I'm coming up with a whole handout on natural skincare because there's a lot to benefit from it. Unfortunately, the literature is very weak, and you have to look at really critically what's out there. So a good moisturizer, shea butter, coconut oil, CeraVe cream, not lotion, and Cetaphil cream. Those are good. Anything creamy or a little bit oily works well. Okay?
Dr. Dhawan, that was a lot of useful information. So among others, 2 learnings, don't overuse soap, right?
Yes.
Something
and don't overbathe.
Yeah, and also save some water. Okay, so that's an interesting, angle which for us to absorb and practice. And of course, very, very interesting to learn that coconut oil is a very effective moisturizer.
It's a great moisturizer.
Yeah, great. So before we go on to many other questions that are pouring in, I just want to tell you that there are quite a lot of people who are really, really enjoying the session and they're commenting. So we have Rupal Dandia saying, Dr. Dhawan, thank you for this excellent session.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and we have Anjali Bahid saying, enjoying the session, and similar, feedback we are getting. So let me pose the next question. What precautions Indian women should take for skin prevention from sun?
You should be wearing an SPF 30 or greater sunblock that contains titanium and zinc. Again, I have a handout that lists all of these, but that's what you should be wearing and reapplying every 2 to 4 hours if you can. There are powder versions, there are cream versions. That's the number one thing you should be doing. And I do that every day. I do it every morning, and I do it right before I leave work. I have it on now because underneath at work with the fluorescent lights, that emits UVB and makes it darker. You really want to protect that. That's number one. And if your vitamin D is a little low, take a supplement. But really, that you want to prevent aging, that's the number one.
Okay, great. So before I call Richard, who has raised his hand to ask a question directly to you, there's a related question. This is not on women, but on young adults. So this says, what do young adults do to have an acne-free skin?
I mean, control the hormone surges, which you can't do for every person because naturally as you're going through puberty, you're going to have them. I mean, if you really, again, moisturize well, sunscreen well, and attack acne at an early phase. Don't let it grow crazy. And you can use over-the-counter preparations. They have some effect. And if you see people aren't improving in 2 to 3 months, you really need to get in to see somebody who really is focused on acne. And that's the key. Many dermatologists aren't as focused on acne. We are because that's what, I see 140 acne patients a month because that's what I do and I like doing it. You have to be very focused on it. And then you start, and whatever it has to be done has to be consistent and done consistently. You can't do it today and not do it for 5 days. And you can't spot treat. And so topical preparations that are available, you can use it right now. There's one that used to be a prescription called Differin, and it works pretty well. Differin, use that at night. And benzoyl peroxide or salicylic acid are adequate, but not great. They work, but only for very early stages.
Okay, so Richard, you wanted to ask a question. So yeah, over to you. You have to unmute yourself to ask question.
Yes, sir.
Richard, over to you. Till you unmute yourself, maybe I go to a question answer. Okay, you're ready. Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm getting on the T-zone. I'm getting dry skin and flaky skin. It is not going with any kind of moisturizer. it comes after shaving or after having a bath, always. And I
Yeah,
don't use any
unfortunately,
soap on my face.
yeah, it could be one of several things. Hard to tell without seeing it, so I'm just taking a wild guess. If it does not improve with moisturizer, you could be having anything that's varying, an allergic reaction to. I mean, the T zone, that's not where you put shaving cream on, though, right? I mean, T zone means the forehead and the nose, correct?
Yes, correct.
Are you red between your eyebrows? You have red flaky patches between the eyebrows
Yes,
and around the
yes,
nasal skin and in the ears, and do you have bad dandruff?
yes.
Yeah, you have a condition called seborrheic dermatitis. Seborrheic
Okay,
dermatitis is an overreaction to a normal fungus that lives in everybody's skin. It's on my skin, soul skin, everybody's skin. So it's an overreaction. So if you do something very simple, again, you should probably see somebody, but really want to try something, you can take a little bit of an antifungal called clotrimazole and another one
okay.
called hydrocortisone over the counter. You mix them 50-50 and it works pretty well for this, and then cover it with a moisturizer. Okay?
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Cool.
So here is an interesting question. It says, how bad is it to sit in the morning sun with face not facing the sun? And I try to do it just to get the vitamin D. So what's your comment
I mean, you can do that. I mean, as long as it's before 10 and after 3,
on that?
10 minutes or less. Don't overdo it. I wouldn't.
Okay. So the other one is any well-being practices or suggestions for people suffering from acne because of preconditions?
Again, what I suggested, the food habits, the stress reduction, controlling hormonal surges, making sure that any underlying hormonal abnormalities are addressed, like polycystic ovary condition, which is common in women. Other than that, it's really, birth control pills work beautifully for some women, but again, that's not natural. Uh, there's not a lot of natural items other than salicylic acid that have any effect. Things like tea tree oil and things like that, not something much. One of the things that may be helpful is a vitamin. It's I believe niacinamide has been used orally and as a topical formulation. That may be helpful. And there are formulations with niacinamide in them. They have benefit in that. Niacinamide is a vitamin B12. That's had some benefit. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Here's a question with several parts. Basically says, what are the top ways you recommend to protect the skin from the effects of sun damage? That's the first part of the question. Then it says,
Yeah.
is it the usual and more obvious? For example, wearing daily sunscreen and wearing a hat and staying in the shade. Can you maybe elaborate on some of these recommendations? For example, should we wear sunscreen each and every day, even in winter?
As I said to you, I wear it every morning, 365 days a year, every day. You're getting sun exposure even when it's cloudy. UVA rays are reapplication after 2 to 3 hours is important. A zinc or titanium-based sunscreen with SPF 30 to 50 would be. If you go to our website, centerforderm.com, and look at the section that talks about patient information handouts, our sunscreen sheet is there. It talks exactly about the sunscreen. And any brand that's there, Neutrogena is good. Elta is a really good brand. Elta works beautifully. It's a 46, and that's what I wear. And most of my staff wears it. This is very light, but you can pick anything. They're all quite good. Some of them are just thicker. That's all.
Okay, so the next one is I've been using the mineral sunscreen or sunblock for a few years now.
Yeah.
I find them drying my skin and hard to remove, wash away. What do you suggest we use to remove it from face, body, etc.?
That's odd because most of the light you're using something that's too heavy. So most people are using titanium and zinc sunblocks made. I'm guessing. I'm not saying you are, but I'm guessing. The ones that are made, kind of the generic ones made at Walmart or Target, that don't have a brand name on them, tend to be thicker and harder to remove. You want something very light. So again, Elta, some of the lighter Neutrogenas are pretty good. They're going to cost you a little bit more, but they're lighter. That's probably the main problem. I think you're just mineral-based sunblocks that are too thick aren't useful to you. And then one of the things that removes oily things really well is Pert Plus, the shampoo. It removes Vaseline amazingly well. So it's going to do great on anything that's very oily. But you can't use Pert Plus on your face. You probably want to use something called Cetaphil or CeraVe cleanser. You put it on and you wipe it off, it takes off everything.
So now there are two questions on vitamin D. Let me go for the first one. How much vitamin D supplements help? How much does vitamin D supplements help with skin issues like dermatitis, eczema, psoriasis, etc.? Have read that there is a correlation between all these things. So hence, I'm asking this for clarification.
Yeah, I mean, low vitamin D contributes to a lot of more important problems like breast cancer. So I would be getting my vitamin D back to normal. And 1,000 to 2,000 international units per day is what most people recommend. So I would get on it quickly. At least check your level. If you're normal, you don't need it. But if you're low, just get on it. So it does help. People who have psoriasis and eczema improve with vitamin D supplements. That's a known thing.
So here is a tricky question on vitamin D is that sun helps production of vitamin D, but using sunblock hinders the production of vitamin D. Is that the situation or is it not the situation?
Well, it is because, I mean, but you have to weigh your battles. My battle is against sun damage, sun aging, and skin cancer. So if you don't feel that that's an important battle, then don't wear sunblock, but you'll regret it in about 10 years.
Okay.
You'll start complaining about all sorts of stuff. So, I mean, taking a small vitamin D supplement or eating foods that are high in vitamin D, milk and things like that, you can Google all the list of that's fine. Just check your vitamin D level. Your routine health screening often will include a vitamin D level. It's important to get that done. I'm low, so I am beyond it.
Here's a question, Dr. Dhawan, which you have kind of addressed pretty well. But I think if there's anything else that you want to add, says please suggest some good natural practices to take care of skin.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've gone over this. It's proper bathing, proper showering, minimal soap use, aggressive moisturization. If you want a natural moisturizer, coconut oil or shea butter works beautifully. Or don't mind something less natural than CeraVe or Cetaphil. Work pretty well. Vaseline is amazingly good in babies. It's been shown repeatedly that if you moisturize babies with a history of eczema in the family, that they would be beautiful.
Okay, great. So the next question is turmeric paste any good for skincare? Because it's quite popular in many regions, including India, of course.
Yeah, turmeric has anti-inflammatory benefits. No one's ever studied it that well. Orally, it does. Cream-wise, nobody knows what it'll work. The internet is full of things that don't work. So if I was going to take a supplement, I'd take the oral one. Okay. Cream-wise, I don't think it gets in. I think you need to be able to get it.
Okay, so there is another interesting item. What do you think of a castor oil as a moisturizer? And also, would you recommend of Purigo nodularis?
Yeah, so prurigo nodularis is very complex. We're actually doing a study right now with a new product for prurigo that works quite well. So if anybody's interested, you can contact us and try to get you.
Okay.
Yeah, prurigo nodularis is a difficult.
What about castor oil?
It's as good as any moisturizer. Coconut oil is the best.
Okay. How do we take care of small bumps under the eyes?
We have to see what those bumps are. That's like saying I'm driving a red car.
Yeah.
It could be a red Toyota, red Honda. My point is, it could be
It's very general.
5, 10 things. We just look at it. Generally, we can kind of figure out what it is, but it's not usually one thing. It's one of 5 or 10.
Okay. So, how useful is biotin for skincare?
It only helps nails grow. It doesn't do anything for hair. it makes the nail stronger. But that's about it. It doesn't do anything else.
Okay. What is the remedy for okay, this is going to another domain, which you may like to address if you wish to. What is the remedy for dandruff elimination? Is it a vitamin deficiency? Any internal supplement will work?
Well, which thing? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
What is the remedy for dandruff elimination?
Oh, no, it's more frequent. I mean, coconut oil is beautiful for it. It's anti-inflammatory. And then you can use some shampoos that contain zinc or sulfur. They work very nicely. And more humid climates tend to do better. Drier climates tend to do better.
So part of the question is it vitamin deficiency? Why you get?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Uh, are Neutrogena moisturizers good for acne-prone sensitive skin?
They're fine. CeraVe and Cetaphil are fine. So most of them don't cause acne, so they should be fine. Yeah. It's just that if you want to get the biggest bang for your buck, get the 1 pound tub of CeraVe or Cetaphil, and Neutrogena just tends to be a little more expensive.
Should I use coconut oil before or after shower?
You need to do it in the scalp at bedtime and probably after the shower. Well, actually, I'm sorry, before the shower, as a moisturizer to kind of moisten the skin, especially if you have eczema, and then you get in the shower and wash it off.
How effective is olive oil for daily moisturizing our skin?
It works fine. Again, coconut oil has the strongest evidence to support it.
Another question, very interesting. How can we remove dark circles? I'm sure the person is referring to under the eyes. How can we use, remove dark circles, particularly if it is owing to heredity?
Difficult, but you can lighten them some. You won't be able to remove them completely. So this is a complex problem that we can potentially discuss in the next lecture. It's going to need a combination of several lightening. Some of them are natural, some of them are less natural. There's things like azelaic acid, kojic acid, which can pregnancy. These are very safe.
Okay. The next question is biotin good for hair growth?
No, it only works for nail growth.
Okay. What do you think of marula or argan oil or other oils for face as natural moisturizer?
Again, no one has shown in good rigorous studies that they do anything better than coconut oil.
Okay. This is again a similar question, but a very generic one and a very pertinent one as well. What do you recommend for under eye dark circles in general?
Again, sunscreen use, aiding creams that may contain a low dose of hydroquinone, kojic acid. Again, this is a more difficult than just, you can recommend these things, but people have to do it in a sequence that's correct, and that's where they get in trouble. They get irritated with the stuff they use. So ingredients are going to have kojic acid, things like azelaic acid. These are natural acids. And then hydroquinone at low concentrations. Retinoids, which are like retinine and things like that. Those all help.
Okay, so this is seems to be a very common problem. The skin tends to become dry around elbows or knees, and surely needs definitely more care than any other part of the body as far as skin is concerned. And what's the best way to keep it soft and well nourished? Any insights?
Proper bathing, and you can use a moisturizer called amlactin with over-the-counter cream, and another one called Kerolite. These are stronger moisturizers that tend to lock in the water. Okay?
Yeah, and another one which goes another level of this problem. It says any insights for cracks on heels or the feet?
The same moisturizers are actually Kerolite works beautifully for cracked heels.
Dr. Dhawan, I would like to request Mr. Naren Bakshi, who has been known you for several decades, He's currently, listening to this program early morning from Jaipur.
Oh, okay.
So he's raised his hand. So over to you, Naren. You've been waiting for a while. So yeah.
Sunil, first of all, thank you very much
Sure.
for,
Thank
for
you.
coming. I've known you for many,
Yes, you
many
have.
years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Somebody who has supported our community,
Yes,
and now
thank you.
you're joining our Crack the Wellness Code movement. Wonderful.
Thank you.
I do also have a question for myself.
Sure,
So
sure, sir.
tell us about nails. So there is a fungus that grows.
Huh?
I clean them up. I put oil in it. So how do we take care of the fungus or growth or uh, you know, especially in the feet?
You need to first treat the fungus on the bottom of the feet and between the toes. That's the
No.
source of the fungus in the nail. Then you put the same cream underneath the nail, and there are now nail polishes that work from the top, so you can attack it, and about 50% of the time you'll see improvement. 50% you will not improve that, and you may need something orally. The oral medication is very safe. It doesn't always work, but there's no safety problem with it. So you start with the creams and the nail polish. And the cream that's very commercially available even in India is called clotrimazole. You put it between the toes and underneath the nail and clip the nail back as far as you
Thank you.
can. Thank you. You're welcome, and have fun in India.
So there are lots of people from India that are joining you too. So we have become a
Great.
global
Great.
event.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah, I
starting this.
just wanted to confirm, Dr. Dhawan. Yes, we have a lot of people from India and overseas. Yeah.
No,
The questions keep pouring, so let me continue. So this comes from one of our patron,
sure.
Rajiv Puranik. He says, "Are oil-based soaps good? Some Ayurveda soaps with Iladi oil, for example, is it something that
You can use them. The problem with the perfumed oils is you develop an allergic reaction. Many people do. So people equate natural with being safe. Poison oak is natural, but we don't rub it on our skin. So what I tell people is be careful about perfume. So Ayurvedic stuff is good. I like ashwagandha. I like a lot of Ayurvedic products. However, for cleansing, a gentle bar soap, ivory or dove, you get ones that are made with natural fats. Those are okay. But anything perfuming, I would avoid it like the plague.
Okay, so the next one is more of a comparative kind of analysis.
Sure.
Have you studied and compared any Ayurveda medicine, and how does they compare, and what's your kind of take on in terms of the benefit for skin problems instead of steroidal lotions and harsh prescriptions that are often recommended?
Well, so I have to question a little bit about the words harsh prescriptions that are recommended. Most of the stuff that we prescribe, honestly, cream wise, is safe. I mean, if you eat it, it's a problem, but if you apply it, it's not going to do much. So, first of all, I need to get people's minds out of that internet based kind of focus of, my God, I mean, I'm applying this, it could kill me. It doesn't do anything. I mean, you'd have to actually do 20 times a dose for a whole year. It's so much focus on this that people don't realize. The first question they ask me is, what side effects do they have? I said, did you ask me what benefit it would be? They've been so ingrained in this whole thing. The other thing is that they can't get their minds out of the fact that natural has to be safe. Well, like as I said, poison oak is natural. I see reactions to natural products as common as everything else. It's just that you have to use them carefully. Careful with it. So again, yes, you can do natural products, and I like Ayurvedic stuff. Unfortunately, the Ayurvedic companies like Dabur and other ones have not spent the money or the time to study these things carefully. I have a whole pile of literature in my files here that I have to go through on the common things that actually work. And may have to do a lecture and update people on it. I have one on natural skincare. There are literature to support things like coconut oil, turmeric, and different skin diseases, but no one studied it to any big degree. There are small case studies, 10, 20 people, not enough. If you're holding medications to a high standard, you have to hold everything else to a high standard. Most of you guys are all scientists and engineers. You cannot base therapy on one case report. Can't do it. Okay? I won't accept it. I have to base it on large scale studies, 50, 100, 200 patients. That takes money and that takes time. And none of the companies have that. Okay? So they need to devote some resources to research and development. I'm very happy that Sun Pharma is working on a natural treatment for vitiligo that I'm going to be involved in. I love that. It's actually going to be FDA approved. It will do something. That is where we need to go. You have to spend money. And Sun and Dr. Reddy's and a few other very strong Indian companies are involved, and I'm very happy to work with them. They're very strong and going to do a great job. I'm very proud of them that they're doing. So we got to get into this, studying this stuff. But Ayurveda has great benefit, and Dabur needs to get going. They need to spend the money.
So, Dr.
That is the
Dhawan,
problem.
we would love to be respectful for your
No, I thank you.
wishes. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
I
Thank you
just
so
want to
much.
let you know
Thank you.
I want to let you know that at ICC Crack the Wellness Code, we believe in science-based, Eastern
Good.
and Western therapy.
Good. No,
Science-based, very clear.
We'll actually have a lecture on natural skincare. I have it to the lecture. I have to update it because I've got 20 more articles to read and make sure that it works. But yes, I think there is great benefit. And in my own practice, I do a lot of combination of stuff. I'm a big coconut oil, ashwagandha, and I love those products. I love those kind of things. They do work. So in any event, everyone have a safe and good day. Thank you, Narayan, and everybody. Thank you, Mr. D'Souza, all the participants. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.